This is chapter 14 on taxes. Let's start out by saying that taxes are the kind of four-letter word of political campaigns. Ever since George Bush, the first, ran against Bill Clinton and had to eat the words, read my lips, no new taxes, it's been a difficult task for any politician and you might add any elected official to raise taxes or introduce a new tax. So everybody tries to avoid them, and you have to kind of keep that in mind as we move into an era when um, things like gambling and user fees are much more popular than the traditional taxes. There's three major taxes at the state and local level. There's the property tax, which is strictly local, and that's on a real property. So anybody who owns a building, whether that's a home or a mortgage on a home or a business building of any kind, has to pay property tax. The only exception to that is religious organizations that don't pay taxes on churches or schools or anything that they own. But everybody else has to pay property tax. And that's the major thing that is the source of funds for for all local functions like education and welfare and transportation and all the things that you saw in the first chapter of the book. The second kind of tax is a sales tax. Now, all three levels, national, state, and local, have sales taxes, and it's the primary source of income at the state level. That's the main way that they make their money. But it also, like I said, is also found that there's a local tax and a national tax as well. And then the last one is income tax. And income tax is found at the state level and at the national level. It's the primary source of money at the national level. They get the first cut. Anybody who has a job knows that if you have a job, that your income is reduced by the national government before you even get a check. So they take it right out, and that's it's considered to be the best form or best way to develop taxes or to have, if you look at the three, property, sales, and income, that's considered to be the best or most lucrative way to raise money. There's also at the state and local level what could be called sin taxes. It's all you also refer to it as excise taxes, and that's usually the reason it was called sin taxes was because it was on items that were originally um, things that people didn't need to buy. Well, if we look at the third one here, gasoline, that would seem pretty strange in our time. But when these taxes started, um, automobiles were a luxury, not a necessity. Hard for you to believe, even hard for me to believe in this world where people have more than one car and they have to use their car to go to work and all that kind of thing. But it's in that category, cigarettes, alcohol, and gasoline. That's mentioned in the book. And I would also add another one, a fourth one, which is the soda tax that we're now facing. I know here in New Mexico, particularly in Santa Fe, where I live, there's a lot of talk, and there's a proposal on the ballot right now to have a soda tax. That is, to tax all sugary drinks that are consumed by kids, especially that would include especially pop. And it's a pretty good tax. It's like I think 2.5% that they're advocating, which would raise the price on I think it's on like 6 ounces, something like that. So that would raise the price of buying a liter bottle of soda to raise it a good $1.50, maybe $1.80, something like that. And the whole intention of that, just like with cigarettes and alcohol, is to try to discourage people from consuming those products. In this world now, today, we face obesity problems, and everybody's looking for a cause and trying to determine, why are kids fat, why are adults fat, what's, triggering this whole system of, which is going to cost the government tremendous amounts of money as people get type 2 diabetes from being overweight. So one of the culprits is sugar, and there's a lot of sugar in pop. So they go after that one. And of course, if they put that tax, it'll help to finance local government. And here in Santa Fe, like most places, the local government is pretty much broke, and they're always looking for some ways to get new taxes. And this one would be a justifiable one because, like cigarettes and alcohol, it's something that a lot of people see as a culprit in the obesity problem, and something that is sort of acceptable in terms of raising people's taxes. Most of the other taxes that we already mentioned are kind of things that you have to kind of stay away from if you're uh, running for office or you're in office, in terms of raising those taxes, and because you're going to make people upset. And people these days, they really are. They it's always said that people don't like paying taxes, but it seems to me like it's way worse now than ever before, that people kind of have a sense or feeling, maybe it's the alienation and the cynicism or whatever, that we we aren't getting our money's worth, and so our taxes are wasted. I mean, that's always been, kind of a background or cloud over government, but it seems worse now than ever before. So, like I said in the beginning, when you raise anybody's taxes, they're going to have a problem of getting you reelected. So the soda tax, like the cigarette and alcohol and gasoline tax, are things that um, are more acceptable. Plus, if you look at these are sales taxes. You buy the product, you pay extra money at the counter when you buy the product, and a sales tax is oftentimes considered a hidden tax because after a while, like with a gallon of gasoline, people just sort of accept the notion that that's what a gallon of gasoline costs. Like, for example, when I went to the gas station the other day, it cost $2.24 for a gallon of gas. That's pretty cheap. It's much cheaper here than, I'm sure, than what you're paying in Illinois. But anyway, I don't think of it, and I think most people are like that. I don't think of it as that's, half of that is basically for the gasoline, and the other half goes to taxes. It's just that's the price of a gallon of gas. It's a hidden tax. It becomes something that we don't think about anymore. And so that's why these kinds of taxes are considered to be more acceptable. Um, so those are kind of the basics of the taxing system at the state and local level. And then I had added these other things, which are the newer taxes, which are gambling and user fees. Again, um, well, let's start with gambling. When it comes to gambling, it all more or less started with the lottery, and I find it very interesting that when the lottery was introduced, it was initially the lottery and bingo. Those two things were the first things that were introduced, at least in Illinois, as I remember it when I was there. Now everybody has almost everybody, almost all the states have the lottery. There's the multi-state lottery, that kind of thing. And when they initially introduced it, most people didn't want it because it was something that was considered to be a problem for a lot of lower class people, poor people. Um, So it was fought. It was fought mainly by the churches and then by politicians who didn't who wanted to side with the churches. So you had the lottery. That was the first thing, and of course the way they got it to be passed, even though there was a sizable opposition, was to say that the money was going to go to education. And I find it curious that that's what happened here in Santa Fe when it came to the soda tax. That's what they're doing. They're saying it's going to fund preschool education, and education is a big problem here because our kids do so poorly on standardized testing. So that's one way to get something that's not very popular passed, is to claim you're going to support education, and that's what they did with the lottery. And then right after that, politicians started denying it. Once they got it passed, they started denying it and said that they would use the money in the general fund. Also, casinos were involved in that. Bingo, I think that kind of went out. It originally was being conducted like old-fashioned bingo, where churches and nonprofit organizations were running the bingos. But once you don't have parishioners anymore, you have these kind of professional gamblers showing up, you get problems. Like people really upset when they don't win. And so that kind of thing kind of went out the door. I don't see much of that. I did see a billboard for bingo the other day, but for the most part, I don't think that's around much anymore. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. And then the last thing is user fees, where you either increase the existing user fees, like license fees, like there's almost all professional people have to be licensed, like lawyers and doctors. And then there's user fees for other things like hunting licenses to use parks and so on. If you want to have a party in the summertime and you want to, reserve a certain part, you have to pay for, a user fee. And then, of course, you start adding user fees, which they've done since we've gotten to the situation about 1980s or so, where people were really upset with increasing taxes, where you had things that were for free, like going to museums and library cards and things of that nature used to be free if you were a taxpayer. All of a sudden they start charging you money for it. So that's what we designate as the user fees. Anyway, those are the essential taxes that you find at the local level. So that would kind of cover what are the taxes, describe the taxes, which we've done. The second question is, what are the similarities and difference between the state and local taxes and the national taxes? Well, the similarity is that they're all using the same taxes, they're fundamentally the same taxes. They're using the sales tax and the income tax. Those are the two essential ones that you find at the state and local level. Income, I didn't mention that some cities like New York, for example, have a local income tax, but that never really caught on a national basis. But the national government has, and the states have, almost all the states have, I think there's only two that don't have income tax, and then of course the sales tax. All three levels have the sales tax. So that's the similarity. The difference is that the national government has dominates the income tax, and that they have the first cut of it, so to speak, if you think about it. And the end result is that state and local governments are much poorer than the national government is in terms of being able to raise money. So that's the big difference. The ability to raise money is much more likely to be found at the national level than at the state and local level. Number three is why are some consider regressive. Well, if you look in the book, I think it's around page 412 or 13 or so, there's a difference between a progressive tax and a regressive tax. Progressive taxes are those that are supposedly charge people based on their ability to pay. So in other words, richer people pay more and poorer people pay less. That's progressive. PRO, progressive. Regressive taxes are the opposite. The poor pay more. So if you look at which ones are regressive, you have to start with the property tax because a lot of people own property who are not rich. Older people are in this category. A lot of people just living on Social Security may have a home that they live in, that they own, and yet they can't afford to pay for increases in property tax that come up. And they're, of course, paying a bigger percentage of their income to the property tax, and that's what makes it regressive. Sales taxes are regressive if they're on products that people have to buy. So that makes them regressive too. So if people have to buy food and that's not exempt, medicine, that's not exempt, in a lot of cases food isn't and medicine isn't. So then that's regressive too because the poor are paying a bigger percentage of their income. Not they're paying more, they're paying a bigger percentage of their income than are the rich people. So the certainly the property tax and the sales tax are regressive, and I would say gambling is regressive because we know that people playing the lottery tend to be people who are poor, and rich people, educated people tend to stay away from that stuff, whether it's that or casino gambling or, you know, any way that the government, any of the gambling methods that the state has legalized. So those are what I would call the regressive one. And then what's the best and worst taxes at the state and local level? I'll let you decide. I certainly don't like increasing gambling, but that's just me. The property tax is probably one of the worst ones in my view, but that's just me. So just pick out whatever you think. And just the main thing is to justify it by giving your arguments in favor or against. Okay, so that's it.